Okay. All right, is everybody's microphone on? Call the meeting to order, and are you ready, Kyle? Oh, wait a minute.
I am ready.
Okay. First order of business is the roll call.
Miss Bain,
Here.
Miss Chaput, Mr. Dribbin,
Here.
Mr. Dugan,
Here.
Miss Finney,
Here.
Mr. Heil,
Here.
Miss Kirkton,
Here.
Mr. Klemp here, Mr. Yoakley, Mr. Eppers, Miss Johnson,
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Next will be approval of the minutes. They've been distributed. Does anyone have any additions or corrections? I have a couple of minor things on the issues that failed. If we could transpose the numbers from the no's back to the yeses first. Right here. It should be 4 to 5. So I'll give that to you, Kyle. They're all in there marked, and that you can keep that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other additions or corrections? Not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Public comment.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. First of all, I'm just a resident, but I do want to echo what City Council remarked at their last meeting when Jeannie presented, that I think you guys have just done a fantastic job in lightning speed. So great job from a 23-year resident. I just wanted to share some interesting perspectives. I've been thinking about all this due to your work. First perspective, Webster Groves was incorporated. There are 5 original neighborhoods incorporated in 1896, and Webster Groves became a city. The charter is dated 58 years later, 1954. What happened during those 58 years? I'm just curious. You know, how did we operate? I'm just without a charter. The second thing, although I like creative ideas, I'm a big one for stability and consistency. And here's the reason. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. My mom was on city council for several years. Wichita at that time was a little under 300,000 people. Today it's 400,000 people. It's grown by a third. Wichita's city government is split into 6 districts. Each district averages about 65,000 people, about as big as Lawrence, Kansas is, okay? I mean, in and of itself, each district. And they have 7 on their city council, 6 districts and 1 at-large mayor. You know what the population of Webster Groves was in 1950? 23,000. You know what the population was in 1980? 23,000. You know what the population is in 2023? 23,000. We are a no growth city. And if you look out in the future, you've got to project and say, Webster Groves isn't going to grow much for 23,000. So we're stable. And so if this ever gets to the community, I think the biggest issue is the at-large and the ward thing. I will vote at-large 100% of the time. And the reason is because we are a small hamlet. We're a small community, and to slice and dice us up, I think would be a huge mistake. I think we have to think as one community, unity, one Webster. But Belemo always says we are one Webster together, and I want people on city council that think unity, not self-serving little neighborhood, for what it's worth. Last thing that I think, I've been thinking about this, that you ought to add to your city charter. It's a new section, but I think it's appropriate in city charter, which is a code of ethics. Think about what's going on in the Supreme Court, Trump, Congress, Senate, politicians. We lack ethics. And when we lack ethics, it hurts trust. And my mom always used to say that communities move forward at the speed of trust. When there's no trust, there's no progress. And when we have no ethical conduct or no ethical standards of conduct, that can hurt trust. And it hurts trust in this city. There are people in this community that don't trust some people in city government. And I think one of the reasons that I think that could help is to establish some ethics. Now, our strategic plan has 6 values: people, excellence, and service, but those are just values of conducting business day to day. A code of ethics is how you behave every day. They're ethics like honesty, integrity, objectivity, transparency, etc. And I think we need to spell that out. And if it was me, this was my city, I would spell it out on one page in the city charter, because a charter defines what we do, but a code of ethics defines how we do it. And I think it's a real important element. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, I expect a meeting.
Well, let me shortchange that since you singled me out. Is there not, I would imagine there's a code of ethics already in place for city employees. Is there not?
There's a code of conduct.
Code of conduct.
Okay,
The code of conduct has certain requirements that one could apply, suggests ethical standards, but not directly.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to member discussion and questions. And one thing I forgot to say is we'll be evicted from this room at 6:55 for the Plan Commission. But it's on the discussion of Article 14, initiative referendum and recall. And it's kind of apparent that we all are all over the place with this issue and have different ideas about percentages and how things should work. And Neil and I had a conversation about what we could do, rescinding the vote, voting on different amendments, voting on all amendments. And Neil, what's your perspective, please?
So there's no talismanic approach to what you have to do here. The idea is to make sure that you are clarifying and sending a clear message to council as to what you think is important. So if the vote created or if the ballot is probably a better way to say it, the ballot created a false outcome, an outcome that you all don't support, then again, the idea here is to make sure that you guys are sending your clear message. So simply rescinding that vote and making sure that in the next vote clearly states what it is you're doing is easy to do. Nothing that you're doing is written in stone. Okay, the only thing that's going to matter at the end is your final report. So at this point, taking whatever approach you need to without being too formulaic, I think is the important idea, to make sure that you are expressing clearly what it is that you want to convey to the council.
And clearly may mean that we all have different opinions.
That's right. So you may not have consensus. You may
Right.
have several different, again, there may be 2 people who vote for one particular outcome, 2 people who vote for another. I would suggest that you send it up in whatever form and with whatever votes you have, so that they understand that this is an issue on which people may be divided. And I think that's something that's important for them to consider. They're talking about scheduling just like you all did, public input and that sort of thing. Well, to me, you are the public input. That's why you have the advisory board. It's that you are, as members and representatives of the community in which you live, you're going to be sending back this input. So in whatever form it is, to make sure that you're expressing your thoughts as diverse as they may be, I think that's what's important.
Anybody have questions or comments?
I personally would favor just sending a message to the council that we all do have multiple opinions on it, but not necessarily going back through rewriting things, revoting, tallying up, but just to tell them that it's a complex issue and there are many different opinions.
I see it somewhat differently simply because the way the vote came out was because I think of an error that there wasn't a choice offered for a particular option, so we voted on what was there. And I think I thought about it for a while, as other people did, said this isn't what we were thinking about doing. So I think, if we come up with diverse views, then that's fine and it should be forwarded as said, but I would like to see a vote on whatever options there may be.
I would agree with that. There's not that many permutations. It won't take too long. And that way just like we did with some of the other stuff, it gives the council the range of opinions among ourselves.
And I certainly agree with that, I'd like to revisit it because it should be straightforward, not a lot of discussion and doing a lot of editing, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
no one in the city of Webster Groves knows more about the charter history, about its permutations, about its frailties, its fragility than you do. And so again, I think having a clear statement from you is the most important, whatever form that takes. But again, it's great to organize it so that they can look at it coherently and say, this is what they intend, this is. And again, I think that can be done fairly.
Anyone else? Well, that moves us on to governance and consideration of Article 14. And if someone wants to move to rescind the vote we made on August 22nd, now would be the time.
I'll move to rescind that vote.
I'll second.
All,
Who seconded?
Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand, please. Okay, motion carries. So I put together a ballot everybody has in front of them. The first option is one that Matthew sent. And then the second one is the one that Joe worked on. And the third one is mine, and it just simply restates where we started from. So if someone wants to move an amendment, now would be the time.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm, before I make a motion, just to clarify for the membership, what at least my intent was to offer the amendment on the second page, A and B, as a starting point amendment that could be brought before the full board, and if other members want to amend the base amendment that I'm offering with different levels, we can go through that motion. So again, I was just trying to simplify the process somewhat. And actually my intent was, despite what the council has done here, was just to have it packaged into one. But if members want to have it two separate votes, that's fine by me.
What is your recommendation, Neil, that we just vote on everything?
I would,
Okay.
again, you've got multiple thoughts here, and again, I think that it will all be valuable. So I would suggest have the vote show what the totals are, they can sort of see how people were on it.
Okay.
And that way, there's no question you address everyone's thoughts.
And Madam Chairman, I have a question again, because I've got a weak memory. Can we vote yes or no on more than one option?
Mhm.
Okay.
Although, if they're competing, you should be consistent. And so if you voted yes for one, on the next one, which might be in competition, I would say no. So if we're going to page one and we're looking at the difference between B and C, which is, do we change it to 5% or 4% for initiative or referendum?
Or 15%, D is 15% on
D
the,
is-
For recall.
Right,
or for recall.
right.
Yeah.
For initiative or referendum, B and C on the first page. So it's the difference between 5% and 4%.
Right.
I would say don't vote yes for 5 and yes for 4. Make it clear which one of those two you're voting. So either vote yes for 5 and no for 4, or the reverse. That make sense?
Well, yeah, but I'll let, my thinking is, I'd like to see 5, but I would settle for 4. So I would tend to want to vote yes for both of them.
Yes, and that was my intention.
Okay.
It's
So
not
no,
that-
you're
not
saying-
that- yeah.
I'm not sure you're saying message.
I think you are. I think for exactly the reason
I mean,
that,
it's a pretty
Paul
small
said.
difference. I'm going for a certain principle.
Yeah.
If they had 6, 7, 8, I'd probably vote yes for those two.
yeah, I had proposed 10 last time and so I didn't propose that again because that was resoundingly defeated. But these two, and just as Paul says, if I don't get the higher one, then I would vote for the lower one to change. So I think we should be able to vote for all of them independently.
And that's why this is your commission.
Okay.
You all can do that. I just think you need to make it very clear in your report what you were doing to how, so that as council reads this, they can interpret it.
If I may,
Yes,
I'm not sure
Melissa.
that, I'm not sure that I have all the materials in front of me. I apologize. I think that I do if they were all sent. But
Uh-oh.
I don't believe that there are any options here for no change. Is that correct?
When you say no change, are you like what we passed the last time?
I'm saying no change to the charter at all. Is that not an option?
Oh, okay.
You would just
You
vote no
just
on all.
No. just
Okay.
vote No,
That's the intent. Okay, thank you.
yeah. And I'm sorry, Melissa, I did not send these out by email. I'll read each question to you as we go.
Well, I do have 3 things here. I mean, I'm not able to follow along with what you're talking about, so I'm not sure that they're the same thing, but they are labeled Matthew and Joe, and then ones that
Oh,
it's not
okay.
labeled. So I think they came in the email, but
Okay, all
that
right.
would be very helpful.
Okay,
I'd
I'll
appreciate
do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a related question?
Yeah.
'Cause I agree with Melissa. I am still in favor of just changing to what we did last time, which is ballots cast, but I couldn't tell that that was anywhere to vote on this time because there's like 5,000 things.
Yeah, no, it's at the
It is
bottom.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a place where I can still vote for what we voted for last week.
Yeah.
Right,
Great. Perfect.
okay.
And then I have a question on the second page. Okay, I guess I'm confused on A and B. Are they the same as anything on the first page?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So I will not offer
Okay,
my motion if we're going to move through each of the sections, which I think must be the
okay,
interests of the members. I will not move for
Okay.
the amendment on page 2. I was approaching this in a different way,
got
but
it. Okay. so
we'll
it's the
all,
same as-
we'll all get there eventually,
Okay,
I think,
Thank
I
you.
hope.
Okay,
I have one question, and maybe I'm reading this incorrectly. A, change charter to base signature thresholds on number of registered voters at the last municipal election. Does that mean 10% of registered voters and 25% of registered voters? Right? That's like a very high, those are very high thresholds if we're going to registered voters.
This divides that question into 2 pieces. One changing the base, and that's what the first thing does, and then the other 2 deciding on percentages.
But it doesn't, I feel like these are much more complicated than the original question.
yeah. I think it's a question whether we want to use registered voters or votes cast, ballots cast, but actually ballots cast is the underlying question. And then it moves on, the next one, to the percentage, if that passes.
But if I voted yes on A, the charter language would change to say 10%, because it currently says 10% based on ballots cast. If all we're doing is changing that phrase ballots cast or votes cast to ballots cast,
But the next two, now I guess if they both fail, but the second one is the registered voters, the percentage that would give us about the equivalent of what we have currently. So that was the reason that was, Joe had picked those numbers or suggested those numbers as fitting with our current ballots cast and the percentages we're using. Does that make sense?
I'm digesting.
I mean,
Okay.
I understand, Kyle, if we voted on that and it passed and we did nothing else, that's exactly what would happen. But since we go on to percentages.
I feel like by A is only answering one half of the question.
Correct.
You're right.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like an appropriate thing to vote on.
So
It
Con-
leaves the question answered.
so Kyle, does my approach on page 2 get to where you're wanting? I'm just trying to help us get through this. Because I do set out there exactly what we're changing.
Yes,
So,
I like yours better.
well, again, this is for the membership to decide, but I mean, but Matthew, if you want to, then just make this as the starting point and then you move and offer changes on top of that.
I would be happy to do that. The problem is that you are asking us to do the same thing that I am, only putting it all in one thing.
Right.
So I would offer a friendly amendment to yours that we start with the higher percentages and then vote down towards the percentage, which is what I was suggesting in the other.
Yeah. Yes.
But that we start with the higher
Yes.
percentages, because that's what happened last time is we ended with the higher percentages. So I didn't, and other people didn't necessarily vote for the lower percentages, which would have been.
So Madam
accept-
Chair, I mean, if procedurally in council, if I offer page 2 amendment to start with, and I make a motion to put that on for consideration, and then Matthew immediately offers an amendment to my amendment with whatever set of numbers he wants to start with, and then he can amend again if he wants to. Is that?
Yeah, that works, but again, it would probably be more formal than we need. I think you just want to make sure you're making a clear statement. And again, I think that the language, as I understand Kyle's concerns, and I understand what Matthew's saying and what you're saying, Joseph, rephrasing all of this into something that is a clear statement is what we want to accomplish. And so, again, I think we would probably be in a position with time better spent right now to hash out whatever it is you're proposing, Joe, whatever it is you think ought to be in the Matthew in order to make sure that we're giving a fair question. Okay?
Mhm.
And then somebody move to adopt that and somebody second it and then vote on it. But have a clear understanding of what that language would be before, rather than worry about motions and amendments and additional. things.
Is it worth just all of us just stating what, I feel like we need to look at this petition signature requirement scenario thing that I think Joe made and figure out what number of, like, if we just say what number we all agree on and ballots, registered voters number. Like, I personally am comfortable with moving it to registered voters at 4% because it's a consistent around 700 voters every election. I feel like if we start from that question, have one proposal to vote on, that's much simpler than trying to start at 25, going down to 4. Maybe it's voters, maybe it's not. Like, I think that's the conversation we should have and have one thing to vote on.
I will say, as someone who was voting for basically no change, I'm much more comfortable with that. If you want to make a case, if people want to say, this sounds really good, I may be willing to vote for that. I am not willing to vote for any of these when we have 20 things. I'm going to say no to every single one. So I do prefer like trying to have some sort of consensus or just saying there's none.
And to your point, like, I voted last time for only the 4 and 10%, because in my mind, that was the practical way to state I want to move to base it on registered voters, not based off of the number of people that voted in the last election, but not making a substantial change to the number of people that ultimately impacts the doors you need to knock on. That was intuitive to me. The rest of the questions, I thought the threshold was too high. I think that's the question we should try to answer.
That's the same place that I'm at on this. It's just hard to piece those together
So why,
with
don't-
the different formats we've had on these votes.
why don't we vote on Joe's amendment? Matthew, you can amend his starting with your higher numbers,
That would be fine with me.
and then
That works for others.
Can I say something at the risk of being incredibly painfully obvious and having everybody laugh at me? Okay,
I pre-laughed.
okay, pre-laughed. Okay, so are we all in agreement that we want to switch it to percentage of registered voters? Okay, so is that right, everybody?
And that was my first vote, the first.
No.
vote.
I-
Okay.
Not every,
Okay, but most
Okay.
people, the majority was
Okay.
for that. So
Maybe.
if you're in favor of that, then we're talking about the difference of for referendum and initiative, 4% versus 5%, and on recall, 10% versus 15% on Matthews. Okay, thank you. Somehow
And once again, which is the number that gets us to about where we are now? Joe,
The
you
lower
did
numbers.
research.
lower one.
the
4 and
lower
10.
ones, 4%
4% and
for
10%.
initiative and referendum and 10% for recall.
Thank you.
And the higher numbers are the lowest or with the lowest of all of our surrounding communities.
Right.
So that is, the standard by which most people are working, or lower than the standard. Kirkwood is the lowest and we are at.
And they're both lower than the model code, which I
Yeah,
think was 15.
Yeah, they're all lower than model code.
Matthew, can you put this document on the screen? I think
I can
this is a
indeed.
very helpful visual
Yep,
for me
yep,
at least, and maybe
I
it'll be
can.
helpful for other people.
Yep, I thought that would be true. Let's share the screen here.
If I may, Madam Chair,
yes.
the other thing to keep in mind on the lower set of numbers that we're looking at, those are the calculations based on the last municipal election, which had a higher turnout. So from a historical standpoint, it's probably trends a little bit higher. But the numbers are where if we did nothing on this issue, it's about where we, would end with the ballots cast.
That is there. There you go.
Could you make the little thing smaller, the windows?
Like, percentage of registered voters is intelligent. I realize there's checking with voters, there's your difference between 16 and 3, but,
Trying to throw another number at us right now.
You mean people who are registered and didn't vote?
and people who were eligible to vote, who were otherwise not registered.
Right.
Okay, are we ready to move forward?
I'm ready, but I don't know where we're going. We're starting on Joe's or Matthew's?
Those.
Okay.
Are you ready? No.
I was attempting to answer Neil's question, but that's not the focus right now.
But who wants to-
I will get it to you. I have it in front of me. I just need a calculator. So I assume same as last time, take a roll call vote, name, yes, no, total. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. We're doing page 2, number A, letter A.
Right.
So not trying to be difficult, but I don't know what page, what all this is. I do want to make sure I'm voting on the same thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't
Can it
have.
be read aloud, please? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I will, Melissa.
Thank you.
A question about the wording. It says signed by electors, the proposed language signed by electors of the city equal in number to at least 4%.
Yes.
So are we saying 4%? Because that seems to suggest that they can, that it,
It says 4% is the threshold. This language would set 4% as the threshold.
okay. It's just that at least seems to be like a flexible qualifier.
Well, it says at a minimum 4%. You can get over, check at least.
So that's to prevent somebody from saying, oh, it has to be exactly 4%.
Oh, I
At
see.
least, yes.
Okay, great.
So I was using language used by other cities.
I was
Yeah.
reading it the opposite, which meant this, that
Yeah.
the city could change it at any time to 6, 5, 7.
It would put it at 4. as a
Okay.
threshold. Could be more, can't.
Does someone need to make a motion to vote on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the motion here on item A. Should I read this out
Oh, you can.
or council or?
And Melissa.
Okay, I'll be happy to. My amendment here is to change the petition signature requirement in sections 14.1 initiative and 14.2 referendum from the current quote, signed by electors of the city equal in number to at least 10% of the number of votes cast at the last regular municipal election. To change it to, and this is the new language that would replace that, signed by electors of the city equal in number to at least 4% of the total number of qualified voters registered to vote at the last municipal election.
Is there a second?
I second.
Paul? Is there any discussion?
Again, go
I'd
ahead.
like to offer an amendment.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Is this the time to do that?
Mhm.
I would like to to amend those percentages to be at the lowest end of all of the communities that surround us, to be 5% and 15%. Oh, 5% for this one.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Further?
I guess, so you clarified where the 5% came from.
Mhm.
And again, the 4% was meant to be close because I'm not calculating it as the same as what we
It's
have.
about, yeah.
You're trying to be roughly equivalent to what we already had at 4%, but
Yeah,
you're trying to
4
take it up because it's higher elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's everybody has at least 10% except Kirkwood, which is 5%.
So to say out loud my thinking, so y'all can sway me if you want. I don't fully disagree or agree with either of this. So my inclination would just be to vote no on all of that. But if you want to sway me that I should pick something, I'm open to being swayed, but I still feel a little mishmash and tempted to kind of go no on all of it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Jennifer, the important thing to me is to have registered voters as a more stable baseline than voter turnout that goes up and down. The registered voters doesn't change that much, but I want to keep personally, want to keep the threshold of a petition signatures about where they are now.
That's sticking with Joe.
Right.
So I did the math to see what the difference is in this example between 4 and 5%, and it's about 175 signatures.
Yeah, I want to say again that we're relying on voters at the last election. You could have had, and this has happened, if you get a really light turnout, if there's a snowstorm that day or something, then you could get a ballot initiative with a really low number of people, and the relying on registered voters, as Jeannie said it very well, is much more stable.
Cool. So so I'm hearing strong 4% makes sense from that perspective.
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
vote for the higher number.
Well, I'm not saying nobody can,
Yeah,
but that's one argument. Anything else is a different argument.
Yeah, no, but I think most people are saying.
Yeah.
That they
Yeah,
want.
those are, I think, the
Go with
two
registered
arguments
voters.
that, we should be up to at least the bottom of the standards around us. And which would be a little higher, slightly higher, 170 odd people higher than the current standards. So it's a very small difference.
And, okay, and Madam Chair. And I guess the counter to that, if you're asking for the arguments, and I'll play devil's advocate here and can argue both ways. We in our discussions about this issue, we found out that there has not been a proliferation of petitions. We are raising the threshold for an arbitrary reason to match what other communities are doing nearby. So at least my thinking is that making the change to the registered voters basis is a big enough change in and of itself, and to keep the number more or less as it was before. And if future councils, future charter commissions want to, deal with this in a different way down the road, if there's a proliferation of petitions, which has not happened yet, then at least we have put them on the right path to do that.
And my counter argument to that is that these thresholds were set in the 1950s. This is not the 1950s. We have lots of ways to get people and to get people involved. And so we need to be advancing that just slightly, just to be at the bottom of that group thing. So it really, we stick with something from the 50s, or do we adopt something that is more in line with the ease with which we can communicate and share information among ourselves? So
to say 175 is a small amount, but that's based on the higher turnout that we had in 2022.
Mhm.
If we were to look at 2020, that same and 846 that you see in that light purple column is about twice as much as would have been required with our current language. So, it's not insignificant when you look at it historically. I personally just don't want to take the choice and the options away from the public. And so keeping it as close as possible to what is existing, yet making it a stable number is most important to me.
So I really appreciate all this. Again, I'm in favor of simplicity. So I can take that people can handle. We should switch to registered voters to be consistent. I feel like doing 2 changes is going to throw people off, and simplicity will be easier for the public to handle. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong. And I don't think that I think we can't agree amongst ourselves on how are we going to educate the public on this. And you haven't swayed me, I guess. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents that I'm voting for no change, because I think that this is not something that could pass, period, because you can't explain it.
Hey, Kyle, you want to call the roll?
So on the vote to
What are we
change-
voting on?
So for
We're voting
Matthew's
on
amendment, which is
Matthew-
5%
Yeah,
of the
Matthews.
registered voters, just to be clear. Everyone understands what we're voting? Okay,
Okay, explain it one more time.
Joe's language instead of.
correct.
yes. That's why you're a lawyer. All right. Ms. Boehm,
No.
Ms. Chapu,
Yes.
Mr. Dugan,
No.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Mr. Eppers is not here. Sorry. Mr. Heil,
Yes,
Miss Johnson,
No.
Miss Kirkton,
No,
Mr. Klemp, yes, and I realize I missed Miss Finney. Miss Finney,
No, but thank you for adding me.
I apologize. I put old list. Motion fails. Yet again.
what was the vote?
5-4. Or wait, I'm supposed to
It'd
say
be
4-5.
yeah.
Thank you. I learned that today.
Okay. Okay, so we're back to the underlying amendment
Mm-hmm.
of Joe's.
Discussion.
Oh, I could just do it like that quick? Okay, sorry, it's my first time. Actually, it's not. I don't even have that excuse anymore.
Hmm.
So give me just a moment. I have to get my list again.
So Melissa, we're back on Joe's amendment.
Thank you.
Okay,
And again, for discussion, Madam Chair? Brief.
brief.
And again, this amendment is then just transitioning us to registered voter basis and keeping the percentages or levels that are roughly equivalent to what the current process gives us based on the last municipal election.
Okay, when you're ready, Kyle.
So to vote to change to Joe's original at 4% registered voters, Miss Bame,
Yes.
Miss Chaput,
No.
Mr. Dugan,
Yes.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Miss Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Heil,
yes,
Miss Johnson,
No.
Miss Kirkton,
Yes,
Mr. Klemp, yes. Passes 7-2. Is that also a sports thing? They always do the higher number first?
I don't know
Okay.
about that.
Well, I can.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to enter the second part of the amendment, which is to change the petition signature requirement, section 14.3 recall from the current signed by electors of the city equal in number to at least 25% of the number of votes cast at the last regular municipal election would be changed by my amendment to signed by electors of the city equal in number to at least 10% of the total number of qualified voters registered to vote at the last regular municipal election.
Is there a second?
I second.
Tammy?
and I'd like to offer an amendment.
Go ahead.
Wait,
Nice.
Hold on. Who made the second? I'm sorry.
Tammy.
Thank you. Heil's amendment. Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
And I would like to amend it to be 15% of the qualified voters.
I'll second.
Cool. Second to that. Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Would Mr. Heil then explain what the levels are? Because I didn't have 15% on the recall. Here, go ahead.
No, I looked at the number. So you did a report on the various cities. And so I counted the cities. One of them uses 25%. One of them, 7 of them use 20%, and 3 of them use 15.
Yeah.
So I picked 15.
Understood. I was
That's
just
where
saying,
that
what is that raw number based on the April 2022?
I did not calculate that.
Oh, okay.
I have a calculator.
15% of 16,010.
That number would be 2,537.
At 10% or 15%?
15%.
15.
Thanks.
And again, that's the lowest among all of the cities in our surrounding.
Any other discussion? And Kyle, when you're ready.
7 seconds.
Mhm.
Ms. Bame,
No.
Oh, hold on a minute,
Oh.
Kyle.
What are we voting on?
Melissa, are you okay on what we're voting on?
I am. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right,
Right.
sorry. Kyle.
just to repeat, to do 15% instead of the 10% as in the original amendment. Ms. Bame,
No.
Ms. Chaput,
Yes.
Mr. Dugan,
Yes.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
No.
Mr. Heil,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Kirkton,
No,
Mr. Klemp, no. Fails 4-5. Thank you.
okay, so we're back to Joe's underlying amendment.
Ms. Bame,
So we're back to.
10%.
At 10%. Yes.
Ms. Chaput,
No.
Mr. Dugan,
Yes.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Heil,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Kirkton,
Yes,
Mr. Klemp, yes.
I've noticed that for a
Motion
long time.
passes 7-2.
very good. So,
It just occurred to me, do we need to do priorities?
well, I guess we should. All right, for the 4% of registered voters that passed 7-2, the priority of 1, 2, 3, priority 1, please raise your hand.
Seven.
And
Melissa.
Melissa.
Oh, sorry, Melissa.
Is that a 1, 2, or 3 priority for you?
2, 3.
Sorry, 2 or 3.
2.5.
One.
2 or 3, Melissa.
3, please. Sorry.
I'll go with her.
Thank you. So same question of priority for changing the recall to 10%. Raise your hand for 1. 7 for 2 and for 3.
Three.
Melissa,
That's me. 3.
thank you.
Sorry. I thought I had my hand raised.
We're looking at the wrong thing. Oh, it says right there.
Oh. I
Wow,
can't see that
technology.
far. Okay. All right, is there any desire to vote on what we passed the last time? Do you want to vote on that?
The thing I was gonna say, I don't know about votes. I had enough votes, I think, but I didn't know if we wanted to add a recommendation to council, should they decide that this is too jumbled and they don't want to change. I would still like that wording changed, right? I'd rather that if they didn't want to go forward with registered voters, that they did change to ballots cast, but that would be a secondary if they didn't want to do what we just voted on.
Madam Chair, I agree with that. That
Yeah.
we ought to.
So I would suggest that you actually put that in the form of recommendation, specific recommendation, in the event that they elect to not change the numbers, but they would still change that language for the reasons cited by the chair.
The show of hands, would everybody be comfortable with that recommendation?
Switch to ballots cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that a recorded vote?
That's it. I disagree. Just for the record.
So I think what we ought to do is then reflect it in the form of the motion.
Okay, all right. So I move that we reconsider the charter change that we passed last time to reference ballots cast rather than votes cast to reflect current practice. Is there a second?
Second.
Jennifer? Any discussion? So we'll vote on this to have a strong recommendation for council.
So the motion, I feel like the motion needs to be made more clear that the motion is in the event that we don't, that the council doesn't want to consider the changes, other changes to 14.1, 2, and 3. We still want that, like, because we already voted on this exact question
Right.
and approved
We
it.
can do that.
Did I just make an
Mm.
amendment?
Madam Chair, shouldn't we be consistent then with the amendments you just made? Shouldn't it be the percentage of the qualified voters registered to vote as opposed to ballots cast?
This just leaves the charter as it is, with the current existing percentages. All it changes is to ballots rather than votes.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this is the backup option. If council decides not to move forward with registered voters change.
So we recommend to council language to reference ballots cast rather than votes cast.
And isn't that, Madam Chair, what you wrote on the bottom of page 2?
Yeah, I think they wanted a clearer it's a recommendation. Okay, so recommend to council as a secondary option, language to reference ballots cast rather than votes cast to reflect current practice. Is there a second?
A second?
Joe? Any discussion? You ready, Kyle?
Just need 7 seconds. Miss Bame,
Yes.
Miss Chaput,
Yes.
Mr. Dugan,
Yes.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Miss Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Heil,
Yes.
Miss Johnson,
No.
Miss Kirkton,
Yes.
Mr. Klemp, yes. Motion passes 8-1.
Okay. Priority. Priority. Oh, priority.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Priority 1.
7,
And me.
Oh.
Sorry.
8. Melissa, what is your priority?
I'm a 3.
Thank you.
And lastly, I've added this on, was a oversight to language that we've corrected throughout the charter about publishing and contemporary means of information sharing. And this is related to the budget that shall be printed, mimeographed, and otherwise produced in sufficient copies thereof. And that just strikes that language and adds that shall be published in contemporary means of information sharing. So I move that we adopt this. Is there a second?
I'll second.
No. Is there any discussion?
Are we just clarifying a vote from last week? I'm sorry. I
Oh,
don't know
no, I'm sorry, Melissa. We're on the last page And it's a 5.13 effective date certification and copies. Do you have that one?
I don't think I have that.
Okay, it's in the Department of Finance in Article
Okay.
5. And it's has to do with the publication of the budget, and that it reads, upon final adoption of the budget, it shall be in effect for the fiscal year. A copy of the budget is finally adopted, shall be certified by the city manager and city clerk and filed in the office of the Director of Finance. The budget so certified shall be printed, mimeographed, or otherwise reproduced, and sufficient copies thereof shall be made available for the use of all departments and offices and for the general use of financial institutions, civic organizations, and other interested persons. And what the amendment does is it strikes the language shall be printed, mimeographed, or otherwise reproduced in sufficient copies thereof. And then it would read, the budget so certified shall be published in contemporary means of information sharing and made available for the use of all departments and offices and for the general use of financial institutions, civic organizations, and other interested persons. So it just cleans up that language, so we're not stuck in language and means of communication that may not exist 10 years from now.
Thank
And
you.
Any discussion? And you're ready, Kyle?
Ms. Bame,
Yes.
Ms. Chaput,
Yes.
Mr. Dugan,
Yes.
Mr. Dribbin,
Yes.
Ms. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Heil,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Kirkton,
Yes.
Mr. Klemp, yes. Motion passes 9-0. Priority 1, raise your hand. Six, priority, oh, sorry, Melissa, what is your
Number 1.
priority 2? Priority 3? We're done.
Very good. Okay, now we'll move on to new business and drafting the report to council. When we were presenting our summary update to council, Mayor Arnold gave us a deadline of October 17th, which was a surprise. So under that consideration, we're talking about how to format our report. And Matthew, if you could pull up that preamble part. You all received the Rockville, Maryland Charter Review Report, which was like 900 pages. It was, but the first couple of pages had a format, and then Joe and I were looking at our presentation boards and figured that most of the information that we want to put in our report on each vote is already there. And rather than reinvent the wheel, came up with this preamble as an example of how a report for each issue would look. And wanted to know what you all thought. It has the issue, what we found as our findings, what's old and what we're proposing. And then at the end, it has the recommendation, whether we passed it or not, the vote, who voted yes, who voted no, and then the priorities. And then there's at the bottom a room for member comment. You know, if people want to comment on what we just voted on and wanted higher numbers, that would be the place to stick it in there and your reasoning why. And how does this look to everyone?
I liked how logical and consistent it is. It's just kind of aligned with how we spoke about things and how people would take that information in.
I like it. Like you said, why reinvent the wheel? We have sort of this format already in some of our materials, so I think it's great.
Thank you, Melissa.
It's very comprehensive and
Okay,
there's nothing to doubt.
so we can go ahead and adopt this format. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Right, good. Now, the volunteer drafters, anybody want to volunteer for sections? I know Joe has done compensation. He was the chair of that. Kyle, I assume you might want to do wards or,
Since no changes were recommended, would it be included?
We did.
I'm just gonna double check that we didn't vote to approve anything, right?
Well, but I think that with the different votes that we had, there was a majority of people wanted some change, but there was not a.
I thought we voted on hybrid.
yeah.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, we did vote for hybrid. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah, and that's another one where people were in different places.
I could deal with the thing about that we just talking about today, take a stab at that, if you want, the whole initiative, referendum, recall, whatever,
Or 14.
yeah, 14, yeah.
Okay. What I'll do, I've created a Google document that I'll email everybody and you can sign up.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do that this evening.
Can I clarify?
Yeah.
We're trying to have somebody take ownership of each part for the recommendation, but then there also might be the additional like dissenting view or something, so that'd be separate from that, or you want like people to send it all to the person that's writing the summary? Do you know what I'm asking?
I think what we can do, and yeah, I think what will happen is somebody will do the foundation of it and we'll look at it and then add things that we want added. And two people can work on each issue, so if you so desire.
Can I just add, I don't know that if we're going to make a recommendation to include a dissent in the same section, sends a clear message. I think it would be more appropriate for any member comments to be relegated to their own section.
No, I think in the crab member comments, we
But like,
can,
is that crab member comments in each term, or is it member comments at the end if about any portion
it's at the end.
Of each section.
of each section?
Mhm.
Feels very confusing to the reader.
This is for the council,
Well, whoever that reader is.
but you have the vote. We know how it passed. But people have different opinions about things that council may want to take into consideration.
I think it'd be easier to have it with the item so that they don't have to flip back and forth and, so not all the pros and cons are going to reflect everybody's thoughts necessarily.
So, Madam Chair, and when I was playing around with different options here, and the chair and I kind of collaborated last week or so on this. I did consider that idea of whether the dissenting or alternative comments should be put at the end, and as Nicole mentions, it's given the fact that we have such a wide range of topics that we're trying to cover here, that it'd be more logical to the reader, to the council members, to have any dissenting alternative views, or even they could be also cheerleader views if somebody wants to offer those to the that section, to keep them close by. It'll flow better and read better, I think.
So is there a way to compile this as like a document once they're all put together and then have it shared, a shared document that we can enter our comments by topic? So
Mhm.
that,
Yeah,
so that we don't have to remember which person to send it off to and.
Right.
yes, that's.
And having the base on which then to comment. Because depending upon how that's written may change the way people address their
Mhm.
comments.
Yeah, I know when I was in the House, when you had testimony from people, it was pro and con. And it's very helpful to hear things from both sides.
And we're wanting to do one of these for each 26 of the, or we only doing certain priority ones, or how is this?
I think
How are
we
you
need to
proposing?
do everyone we voted on, but some of them are simple, like what we just voted on, cleaning up language and,
And some of them may not engender anybody wanting to add comments. I
oh,
would
yeah,
suspect that would be true of many of them.
right,
Well, and some of them go together. We had some.
Yeah.
with 3 or 4 parts.
yeah. Okay. Old business, just for your information, it's the open house question and answer that people raised at the open house, and I think Jennifer and Tammy both had questions from people that attended, and all those are in here. So our next meeting date is September 26th.
Can I ask a question about the list of questions and answers? I think this is awesome, but I will say, like, I don't need it. I think the public needs it. So is this going up on the website with the other stuff?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we also did it to kind of give the council guidance on where they would need to clarify what some of these terms are.
I just can imagine there, maybe not a lot of people, but there's a few people that would like that to be in the public, so then they can say, oh.
Yeah. So do you think we should meet in person on the 26th?
Are we all gonna have to try to have our drafts together then?
That would be nice. I, there, agreement, we should be here in person on the 26th, or just start submitting
Yes.
our,
I think so.
yes, Melissa? Okay,
And we'll have a draft of the whole thing before, by that date. Because that's really that's our next thing to deal with.
yeah, I mean, if we're gonna meet the council deadline of October 17th, if we could have at least roughly, if not completely finished sections, that would be great. Why don't we plan on meeting here on the 26th then?
Okay.
Yep.
And I'll send out the Google Doc to sign up for any sections that you want to volunteer for. Okay. Any other discussion before we adjourn?
Do we want to meet on the 9th would be the next of October would be our next, oh, that's,
It's a holiday.
it is a holiday. So one more meeting before the 17th.
Madam Chair, parliamentary question here. Do we need to do a formal adoption of the whole report?
I would tell you when you're done, you should. It should have your seat.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to be unanimous.
Mhm.
But it should have your seat.
Is the 10th, 10th, a council meeting.
First and third.
Okay. Does October 10th work?
I couldn't be here at 5.
And I won't be here in October.
Maybe I should check with Dr. Peoples what's available. First parts of October.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to get you some dates if you'd like to work on it via email, and then we can send out a doodle poll if you'd like.
Oh, okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Matthew,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Night, Melissa.